Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for. Today, it is the Texas Longhorns, a team that FanDuel has at 10.5 wins. They have them in the top 5 in terms of national championship favorites. And so the bottom line is pretty simple. Texas is coming to the SEC. They're coming to win. And we're going to share some thoughts on the over-under of 10.5 just in a moment. Before we do, I want to remind everybody, make sure to subscribe to College Football Betting with Aaron Torres. You can get it on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get podcasts. If you want to leave a rating and review, I'd appreciate it. And you can also find us on YouTube. College Football Betting with Aaron Torres on YouTube. Just search it. You can't miss us. We're closing in on 1,000 subscribers and would appreciate a subscription there. Also worth noting, by the way, if you missed any of the previous episodes, we did Bama, we did Georgia. Today is Texas. We're going to be doing these all July into August, right up until week 0, and we'll hit on all the major teams. So you can get them out of order. It doesn't really matter. But again, today, the focus is Texas. So let's get into it. The Texas Longhorns, baby, that's right. They have arrived. They are here. They are in the SEC. And as I said, they're coming to win the SEC. Worth noting, I know I just said it a second ago, but at FanDuel Sportsbook, you know that Texas has the 4th best odds to win the national championship behind only Georgia, Ohio State, and Oregon. Their over-under win total, which we will focus on right now, is at 10.5. That is the highest in the SEC, tied alongside Georgia. So this is a good team. This is a team that believes they have the roster to win an SEC title. And they are, listen, Sark said it at Media Days. He said this is the deepest, most talented team that we have had at Texas, and that includes a season ago. So let's start with a season ago because, listen, we got to give credit where it's due, right? I know that Texas historically has been a punching bag. They get made fun of. They get mocked. But to their credit, they were back last year in a big way. All started in week 2. They show up in Tuscaloosa, and they smacked Alabama. I mean, we all remember the game. I know the final score was, a 10-point deficit? I mean, they were running up and down the field on that Alabama defense and really especially dominant on the defensive end when Alabama had the football. So they win that Alabama game, signature moment for the program. They do lose the Red River game against Oklahoma. But to their credit, rest of the season, the back was against the wall, and they won even while juggling quarterbacks, even while Quinn Ewers gets hurt. When they lose to Oklahoma, they're 5-1. They reel off 7 straight wins, dominate Oklahoma in the Big 12 championship game, go to the college football playoff, where, of course, they lose to Washington in a thriller, a game that came down to the final play, a game that bluntly they could have won. Now, in terms of this year, listen, it all starts on offense. It all starts with the quarterback. It all starts with Quinn Ewers. And he's another one. Listen, I was critical of Texas going into last year, but part of it was I just didn't really see it with Quinn Ewers. I saw it in that Alabama game 2 years ago when they played in Austin. But to his credit, after kind of an up and down season after he returned from injury, Quinn Ewers was awesome last year, okay? 3,400 yards, 22 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, just under 70% in terms of completion percentage. And reminder, he kind of did that at a moment in time where he was kind of returning from injury and just kind of missed some games, came back, put up all those stats while kind of in and out of the lineup. Again, missed, I believe, 2 games overall. Apparently, and I know we're talking over-unders here, but people like Quinn Ewers because he is 3rd in the Heisman odds at plus 1,000 at FanDuel. But it all starts with Quinn Ewers. But what's interesting about Texas, and I know I'm not breaking any news here, but out of everybody in the sport, you could argue that they probably have the best backup quarterback situation as well. God forbid Quinn Ewers does get hurt. We don't root for injuries. Nobody's saying that. But we all know what Arch Manning is, what his upside is capable of. And even if Quinn Ewers goes down, they're still in pretty good shape. In terms of the run game, they do lose Jonathan Brooks. Jonathan Brooks got hurt late last year, was a 1,000-yard rusher. But in the process, it gave C.J. Baxter some big-time reps. And just as importantly, Texas might have the best O-line in college football, okay? You know, the days of Texas being soft or weak in the trenches, whatever, those days are over. Kelvin Banks is the headliner on the offensive line. I would argue probably the second most important player in this program behind Quinn Ewers. He is going to be a first-round pick. The stat that blows everybody away, expected to be the first Texas offensive lineman taken in the first round since 2002. So it shows you how long it's been, but it shows you that Texas finally has the right pieces in the right spots. One place that I don't want to say concerned, but at least having some questions. Let's talk about that receiver room, right? Because we focus on Quinn Ewers. They lost a lot of talent out of that receiver room. Xavier Worthy, first round pick of, the Kansas City Chiefs, right? A.D. Mitchell, Adonai Mitchell, second round pick, Indianapolis Colts, Jatavian Sanders, tight end, early round pick. You go back and look. How about this? Just from those three guys, you lose 175 catches and 18 touchdowns. So there was a lot to replace. To Sark's credit, they did a great job in the portal bringing in impact guys in that wide receiver room. It starts with Isaiah Bond. We know he was at Alabama. We know he had the famous 4th and 31 gravedigger catch against Auburn. 48 catches, 668 yards, 4 touchdowns last year. Silas Bolden, 54 catches at Oregon State, was really good for that program. Matthew Golden, 38 catches for Houston. And Amari Niblack, another Alabama transfer, 20 catches, 327 yards, 4 touchdowns, was a security blanket for Jalen Milroe. Really talented tight end. So that's the offense. Defense is very interesting because there were some very bright spots on that defense, and there were some very dark black holes, if you will, on that defense as well. How about this? You don't see this very often. Top 5 in the country in run defense, in rush defense for the Texas Longhorns. A season ago, they gave up just 62 yards on the ground. The problem? Ranked 113th nationally in pass defense, 254 yards allowed. It obviously cost them in the college football playoff against Washington. To a smaller degree, it cost them against Oklahoma. I mean, Dylan Gabriel went right down the field when they needed a touchdown. Didn't ultimately end up mattering. They win the Big 12, but it was a concern, and it is a concern going into this year. I think what's interesting, listen, I know that Sark has recruited at an insane level, and it's to his credit, but their 2 best defensive linemen are in the pros now. Byron Murphy, first-round pick. Tavondre Sweat, second-round pick. Byron Murphy, 8.5 TFLs, 5 sacks. Tavondre Sweat, 8 TFLs, 2 sacks. So you lose 2 marquee players up there, and you do lose probably your best linebacker in Jalen Ford. Now, in terms of the defensive line, you do have some nice pieces coming back. Ethan Burke was a terror on that defensive line. Baron Sorrell, Alfred Collins. There's all sorts of talent on that defensive line. The linebacker group is where I'm very interested. Anthony Hill, former 5-star. It did not take him long to prove that recruiting ranking was not by accident. He was a freshman All-American, Big 12 co-defensive player of the year as a freshman defensive player of the year, I should say, to be fair. But 67 tackles, 8 tackles for loss, 5 sacks as a true freshman. He's back. And then the important name to know in the portal, Trey Moore from UTSA, from Texas San Antonio, another dude that was an absolute monster at his previous stop, the AAC Defensive Player of the Year, 17.5 tackles for loss, 14 sacks. Before we get to the schedule, do have to talk a little bit about this secondary. Because, there are certainly some questions coming into this year. As I said, 113th nationally, simply will not get the job done as the competition increases in the SEC. Good news, you do have some returning players. They got to be better, though. Gavin Holmes was a high-profile transfer from Wake Forest a year ago. He's back. This year, Andrew Mukuba is in from Clemson, 42 tackles, 6 PBUs a year ago. This is the question mark, right? The good news is, you're not facing a ton of great passing offenses in the SEC, but at the same time, it's got to be better because you can't win at the highest level when you struggle that much in one spot. Now let's get to the schedule, because this is where it's interesting, because ultimately at the end of the day, we talk about it with all of these teams in the SEC and the Big Ten, really. We'll get to the Big Ten schools in a little bit. But at the same time, like, it is kind of interesting. By the standard with which we judge SEC schedules, Texas actually got some breaks. Now, they have some really tough games, so I'm not underselling it. But when you look at the schedule, a couple things stand out. One, these are the teams that they don't play. No Alabama, no LSU, no Ole Miss, no Missouri, no Tennessee. I believe all those teams are going to start in the top 25 in the first AP poll. As we're recording, that first AP poll is not out. Those might be top 20 teams, all of them. Texas plays none. No Alabama, no LSU, no Ole Miss, no Missouri, no Tennessee. Beyond that, because of the neutral site game with Oklahoma, they catch a break. They only play 3 true road games because Oklahoma will count as a road game on the schedule. And those 3 road games, at Vandy, at Arkansas, at Texas A&M. Now, bluntly, I'll say this. I know that Texas A&M and Arkansas are going to be as rabid and hostile as any places in America when Texas shows up. I mean, Steve Sarkisian said it at Media Days. He said, I think Arkansas hates Texas more than they love themselves. Don't think he was lying on that one. And it's kind of the same with Texas A&M. We know what that rivalry means, and we know opening at Kyle Field, that is going to be one of the crazy environments in all of college football. So you do have 2 tough road venues, but overall only 3 true road games. And then the counter to that is, listen, Arkansas might be a tough place to play. They were picked to finish 14th in the SEC this year. Vanderbilt, of course, picked to finish last. So, I mean, you're talking about, of your 3 true road games, 2 are against teams that were picked to finish in the bottom 3 of this new 16-team league. So you have those, but it is worth noting, do have some tough games. Obviously, the headliner in the out-of-conference at Michigan, defending champs, that ain't going to be easy. And then, of course, in conference, you do have Georgia. And what's interesting about the Georgia game is a couple things. One, it is at home. That's the benefit. The bad news, it's a week after you play Oklahoma in the Cotton Bowl. And so, look, you're never going to overlook Georgia. But, I mean, have to play Oklahoma and Georgia back-to-back. That just shows you this is a different league than the one that you're stepping out of. Those 2 games back-to-back are brutal. And then I will say, again, because of the way the schedule broke, it does get easier. You do get Florida at home. You get Kentucky at home. And you get Texas A&M to close the regular season at Kyle Field. Let's get to it. Over-under win total, 10.5. I know I didn't give you a definitive over or under for Alabama or Georgia. I gave you a lean. I'm going to do the same thing here. Because, listen, this show is not about, we guarantee this. No. I'm honest. I'm transparent. I'm truthful. I'll tell you what I like, what I don't like. I don't think I'm as high on this team as most. And I would probably lean under on this. I leaned over on Georgia, over on Alabama. Probably won't be betting them. I'm going to lean under on Texas, and there's a few reasons why. One, I think we're kind of underselling how much they lost. Now, I know every great program loses players in the offseason. Michigan lost a ton. Alabama lost a ton. Georgia lost a ton. Oregon. Like, it's not as though every great program is going to lose players. But you look at this team. They basically lost their whole receiving core, including 2 guys that were essentially first-rounders. I think A.D. Mitchell was like the 3rd pick of the 2nd round. So like 2 of the top 35, 40 players in that draft. Jatavian Sanders was awesome last year at tight end. You lose your entire wide receiver core. That defensive line, you lose your 2 key players there. And then that secondary has a ton of question marks. And so to me, that's part of it. Then also think it's kind of worth noting Quinn Ewers. Quinn Ewers, listen, again, I said it a minute ago. Nobody roots for injuries, but we got to call a spade a spade. Each of the last 2 years has missed time. Each of the last 2 years has been out with injury, at least at certain moments. Now, thankfully, it's been nothing major. I think last year, like I said, I think he missed 2 total games, but it's like, it's hard for me to trust that he can make it through a whole season. Arch Manning, I understand, is a great backup. I just said it might be the best backup situation in the country. But he is still a redshirt freshman, no real meaningful snaps outside of blowouts last year. So that worries me. Can Quinn Ewers make it through a whole season? And if not, is Arch Manning really ready? Again, we're not wishing injuries upon anybody, but it's just the reality. And then finally, let me say this. I know it's cliche, but the week-to-week schedule stuff really does matter to me. And again, Texas has a very manageable schedule. Like look at Texas's schedule compared to Oklahoma. I think we'll probably do Oklahoma in the next couple episodes. Oklahoma has an insane schedule. Oklahoma's at LSU. Oklahoma's what are they? I'm trying to think off the top of my head. Let me just pull it up really quick, because Oklahoma is, and this isn't an Oklahoma show, but at LSU, at Ole Miss, at Missouri, plus Alabama, Tennessee at home, Texas on a neutral. And so you compare that with Texas, it feels manageable. But at the same time, there are just so many more tough games. And I think it's kind of worth noting, like, they did not blitz through the Big 12 last year. 3-point overtime win against Kansas State. 3-point win against a bad TCU team. Houston, it was a one-possession game until the final minutes. They win by 10. So now you're going into a tougher league, more hostile environments at Arkansas, at Texas A&M, plus at Michigan, plus Georgia at home. It's just going to be a tougher grind. And so in the end, to me, this feels like a 10-2 college football playoff type team, maybe even make the SEC championship. But these are over-under win totals. And if you're asking me, are they winning over 10.5? I'd probably lean under. This feels like a one-unit kind of bet from me. But I do think I would take the under with Texas because, again, they actually do lose a lot. Quinn Ewers has not been able to consistently stay healthy. And I do think that schedule is a factor. Again, you just go back. Besides that, Michigan, Oklahoma and Georgia in back-to-back games. Florida, then at Arkansas. You have a nice win against Florida, then you got to go to Arkansas. That place is going to be crazy. Play a good Kentucky team, then you got to go to A&M. 10-2 feels right. The under feels right. A small play from me.